Good morning, Susan. Welcome.
Good morning. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. Are you ready for this conversation?
I am so ready. So
Okay,
excited to be
great.
here.
Well, so thank you so much for being here. We're
Yeah.
waiting. We're waiting now on Katarina, so she should be joining us shortly. And we're already starting to see people join us live, which is great.
Yay.
I was just saying that this is my first Instagram live, so hopefully we won't have many technology glitches.
Yeah.
So, Susan, I hope you have more
Mine
experience
too.
than I do.
No, I didn't even know you could do this on Instagram, so we're all learning.
Yeah, see, there's always a first time for everybody, right?
Hmm.
I know that we have some people joining us now, which is great. This will have people joining us from different parts of the world. So good morning, good afternoon, wherever you're joining us. It's great to have you. I know that we're waiting on one of our guests. She should be joining us in, but we can go ahead, get started, and start with some introductions. I'll start by just introducing myself. My name is Yokarditi Rocha. I am the CEO of the CLEO Institute, and really I'm honored to have this conversation with another incredible leader who's joined us just now, and we'll be really hoping that this is a conversations with all. So I hope you out there in the live can join and be part of the conversation when we start doing the Q&A. We're co-hosting today with Climate Generations and our Kids Climate to really amplify stories and urgent asks as we head into the global climate negotiations happening in Belém, in Brazil, later in November in COP30. Welcome, Katerina. So glad that you can join us. I was just started to do introductions, so we're gonna get started. But really, the we are here together trying to raise our voices as we head into what it is yet another pivotal climate negotiations and summit. We are bound by a multimedia campaign that you'll hear more about called Our Present, Icarus Futures, Intergenerational Voices for Climate Action is the theme of today's meeting, today's live. And the goal is simple. It's simple. It's really to translate concern into pressure, but before I do that, I wanted just to give a little bit of information of who we are. The CLEO Institute for the last 15 years, who is headquartered in Miami, has been focusing on building climate education, community engagement, and advocacy. We bridge science, culture, and civic action, training teachers, students, parents, and working also with governments at different levels to secure a just and resilient future in the face of the climate emergency. Our approach is simple. We make science accessible, center the people that is most impacted, that are on the front lines, that are feeling the disproportionate impacts of a warming climate, and convert awareness into measurable pressure and agency for policy change. We believe that when communities are informed and mobilized, leaders have no choice but to act. And that's the reason why we're here today. So we also believe that most powerful policy starts with real important stories. And today we will center live experience and the reality that many of us are already facing and pair that with action. You will hear their stories and individual voices of two incredible leaders that are working really hard at this at the center of this issue. But you will also learn about the story of Icarus. And Icarus represents the 385,000 babies that are born every single day. In the myth, of course, you know that Icarus, in the mythological myth, Icarus ignored the science, ignored the warnings, ignore and flew too close to the sun, and burning his wings out of wax and paid that ultimate price. Well, today humanity faces that same situation with climate change. And so we'll hear from Katerina, a mom from the front lines of the Amazon, and we will hear from Susan, an educator, youth, and an educator leader. We're coming together in one voice to protect the people and the places we love from the impacts of a warming climate. And we will close with a concrete call to action where we're going to be calling out as the delegates arrive in Belém in Brazil with three major concrete demands, which is we need the most ambitious and forcible emission reduction cuts the world needs to see to curb the increase of our rising temperatures. We need to stop subsidizing pollution, the same pollution that is warming our planet. We need to stop subsidizing and giving them all this multi-billion subsidies that continue to pollute our atmosphere. And we need to keep those industry lobbyists out of these convenings and out of the negotiating room. So I am going to pass it on to our two guests, and I'll start with Susan, who is the Executive Director of Climate Generation, Susan Phillips. Climate Generation's mission is to ignite and sustain the ability of educators, youth, and communities to act on systems perpetuating the climate crisis. So welcome, Susan. It's great to have you here. And
Thank
then I'll
you.
it's so great. We'll get to it right now. I just want to introduce Katerina since she joined us a bit late. And Katerina Nefertari, who is the Communications and Mobilization Manager for the Amazonia DP, representing Our Kids Climate. And Our Kids Climate believe that all children today and tomorrow should inherit a healthy planet, a just world rooted in renewable energy and built through intergenerational solidarity. And that's why we're here today. They work to build the strength and capacity of the growing parent and intergenerational climate movement worldwide. Welcome, Katerina. Also, it's great to have you. All right, well, let's get started. Susan, I'll start with you. You have been to many COPs before. From your perspective, why is this COP a pivotal one? And what concrete steps do you feel that countries need to ensure the commitments brought today translate into real measurable outcomes and change?
Yeah, thank you, Roka. I think we've all begun to wonder, right, in the last few years, is what happens at the COP actually making a difference, right? We had this historic agreement that happened in Paris, and that's been 10 years now. And each year, we see more and more fossil fuel representatives, extraction representatives in the actual negotiations. Well, the people from frontline communities, our observers, are kicked out of spaces where negotiations are going on and whose voices are not heard or centered. And so I think this COP is pivotal because for the last couple years, I've heard leadership around the world calling out for reform. The process is not serving us, and we are running out of time. And so I even have a colleague here in Minneapolis who wonders if this might be the last COP. Like, our people, we know less people are choosing to go this year. So are people going to start finding other ways to come together, to learn from each other, to understand what hyperlocal sort of solutions are being implemented to create solidarity among frontline communities and to do work outside of that structure? I don't know. I would like to see multilateralism work, right? We need that. We need international agreements and leadership at an international level. But I think trust that the COP is an effective place to make that happen is waning,
100%.
unfortunately.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And I guess a follow-up question, and maybe Katerina, this is for you. How can we as citizens and advocates across generation hold our decision makers, our leaders accountable beyond the conference stage, right? Because COPs are a well-known venue to come with big, bold commitments and announcements, but beyond the conference stage, how we make sure we continue to enforce these bold commitments that they like to shine a light on during the negotiations.
Hello, everyone. I'm very pleased to be here with you all today. Such a great discussion until now. And for me, I'm talking from Belém, the city of COP30. So I'm really happy to be here because I think when we stop to hear the voices from the territory, it's very interesting perspectives that we can see. So I think that we need to ensure that our mobilization, the civil society mobilization, will be on the front line of the discussions too. So here in Brazil, we will face a different COP from the past few, because they were in countries where the public voices was not were not heard, so we actually see a silent march in a few cops ago, and this is crazy because how is a march silent? So why can't the people have their spaces to make themselves heard? So I really think Brazil COP will shake a little bit of this multilateralism, and the world will see the power. We'll see again the power of the people on the streets, and we will say what we want so loud that the decision makers won't be able to ignore us. So I'm hoping this COP will be about people on the streets, about our voices going far.
Yes, yes, I could not hear. I firmly believe that. And when Paris was signed in 2015, we marched on the streets of New York, we marched around the world, and it was our collective power, that our collective voices that showed up and put the needed pressure that the world needed to see to finally come together to tackle this issue. Now, Susan, back to you. The science is clear. Half measures won't cut it. Our children's future is under threat by fossil fuel pollution and inaction. Climate generation has been equipping educators and young people to connect science and civic action. And as we head into COP30, how can education and storytelling help young people transform their concern for the future in the meaningful political and community leadership that we need today?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we consider climate change education and climate justice education a solution, right? We need to continue to build awareness. We need to empower young people to envision an alternative future. And so storytelling does help. Storytelling is the place where we connect our own lives and our own stories to the climate crisis. And storytelling is the space where we imagine a different world. And it's in that imagining of a world that we could build together that we know what we're working and walking toward, right? Like we have to have that vision. We what we're encountering here, and I'm sure you know this, CLEO, in the United States, is that the fossil fuel companies are embedding curriculum that is full of pro-fossil fuel propaganda into our schools across the country. It comes with money, and people need money desperately in the education sector. And so we not only have to work hard to make sure that educators feel empowered and confident across all topics and subjects, interdisciplinary, K-12, in teaching their students about climate change and climate justice. And then we have to fight those false narratives at the same time. So we
100%.
we have work to do, but it's still important. And young people tell me all the time that having spaces where they get to translate their anxiety and their grief and their anger into action is what helps them feel motivated, determined, and engaged to make a future and hopeful. So we need to keep showing up for our young people in these ways.
And that's our motto, right? Action is the antidote to despair. Taking
Yeah.
action, whether it's the power of our voices, the power of our votes, the power of our purses, right? There are ways that we can still bring meaningful change. So that is so true. But the fossil fuel industry has been at it for decades, investing billions of dollars on misinformation and disinformation, and trying to uh, change the science in our school, as you well said. So, Katerina, when you think about the world, our children, your children, my children, will inherit, what worries the most to you, and what gives you hope in the face of everything that we're, facing?
Great. It's very inspiring to hear Susan because I think I also believe that, and I know that climate education is essential. So I think this is a thing that gives me hope that nowadays we are doing such a great climate education, um, that people are really listening. We are now able to translate complicated points of view because climate, when we talk about climate area, we are not talking about accessible language. You know, COP is not accessible. It's really hard to explain what is COP, even here in Belém, where I live. So people don't actually understand. And why don't they understand why it's so inaccessible? It's a plan, I guess. It's a plan for people do not understand and to make more. I think they might have an annual meeting of creating new strange words to build this better with society. So I think nowadays we need to take everything we have. So I think this is, I know this is will be a very important year for adaptation topics. In here in Berlin, we really need adaptation actions. But
Yeah.
how do I explain adaptation for people? How does it connect with their lives? Because the word adaptation do not explain itself. So what gives me hope, it's this, the education we are doing, the pedagogics we are making, and how we can learn from each other, knowing that this fight didn't started with us, it started a lot of the generations before. In our generation, we need to do a very good work to make the future generations look back and see, no, I am fighting now because someone fought for me. So this is what gives me hope too.
Amazing. And you said some things that really resonate. Sometimes for those of us who have been in this movement for so long, we could get deflated because we are not seeing the kind of movement that we want to see because this is so time bound. There's a ticking clock. We know we have a window to try to curb the rising of the temperature in a limited time. But progress is happening, and sometimes we have the wrong perception that it needs to be linear, and it is not. It's erratic, it's ups and downs, and like a staircase. And having been in Paris and having been at several COPs, I know how inaccessible that process is, and how slow movement has been. But I think, when we speak from the heart, I think we can get to people and have people understand that there are things that they can do, even if they're not a policy expert or an energy expert or a scientist or an educator like Susan. And Susan said something really important, which was to tell young people to envision the world that they can see, they can have, because that kind of world is possible. The solutions for solving these issues exist. And I don't want to forget to mention that the Icarus petition, and if you go to the website, and I know that Peyton has been putting that on the chat, and it's act for Icarus.com, there is a contest, an art contest going on right now where people can really display the future they want to see in the medium that they want. And I think it's important because art and culture really touch people's hearts and minds in a way that science doesn't. And it's important to have those spaces for people to express themselves. So I just want to make sure I said that. But looking ahead, and I guess, Susan, I'll pivot this to you. What is, first of all, are you going to COP? What will be your interaction on COP? I know you have been to several other conference of parties, but if you're not, what are your priorities around this process, and how can partnerships leverage our strength of coming together to try to be louder in spaces where it's silenced by default, as Katerina said?
Yeah. Sadly, I personally will not be in Belém, and I am torn up about that. But we have badged a number of BIPOC individuals from frontline communities here in the United States, because those are the voices that need to be centered right now. And so we are going to put out our Window into COP digest. During those 2 weeks, we create a digest that we send out to our email list that we summarize in plain, everyday, understandable language what is happening in the negotiations so that people can understand. And then we include content from the people who are have our badges, what their impressions are, what they're seeing, what they're noticing, what they're feeling while they're on the ground there. And then I teach a class at a local university for educators to learn about COP so they can bring that into their classrooms, right? Because it is like everyone on this call has said, it is a whole nother language and a whole nother culture and very hard to wrap your head around. But we need to start preparing young people to understand that space so that they can enter into it. And educators are the front line of that. So empowering educators to teach about the climate conference so that they can take that into their classrooms and help their students understand the importance of this.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I guess, Katerina, Brazil has the limelight right now. Your government has been allow voice in the protection of the Amazon, against deforestation, trying to curb the deforestation, to what we all know is the lungs of the world. We just heard a few days ago that the government has given Petrobras permission to do oil exploration at the mouth of the Amazon River. And I just want to, maybe if you can share, how does that make you feel?
So this is really a thing that is happening right now, and we are feeling so deeply because it's not easy to know that one part of the world is saying that the fossil fuel industry is not a solution, is actually a problem. And in Amazon, we are already seeing so much destruction on behalf of economy evolution, but the economy evolution do never come to the community. So who is earning?
Oh, I think we lost your sound, maybe. Susan, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, let's see. Let's see if we can get her back.
Okay?
Technology. Yes.
Yes.
Yay.
I have a limited time on Instagram and just popped it in my screen.
Oh,
Sorry.
that's okay.
So,
We got you.
so Okay, so who is earning from fossil fuels industry? We don't see it, the money coming from communities. And this fossil fuel issue is coming all the year, all the past a couple of years is coming, and the civil society is pressuring. We are trying to make awareness about it with local community too. But fossil fuel industry, it's full of money, full of advocacy, full of power inside the Congress, pressuring the government. And it's really hard to explain. Brazil is not a well-developed country. So every narrative of, oh, okay, this will make more works, jobs exist. This will have economic development for the community. So these narratives really goes on, but we know in the ground what happens. The destruction of the territory just goes, and it's really hard. And we really want our president, as he's known for his leadership in climate action, to really take commitment in not advancing with fossil fuels exploration here in Brazil. But this fight is not earned. yet, but we'll keep fighting. There's a petition with the Congress that is right now going. It's not the Congress exactly, but it's the Federal Justice from Brazil that a couple of organizations just sent, and we are trying to take back this action, and we can't stop trying because, but it's hard, it's hard because it's big forces going from each other, so it's really tough to see this happening, but we need to keep fighting too.
Yeah, it is very hard, and I'm so sorry, because these are the kind of things that deflate us, right? And it makes you feel that, we are trying to fight systems change when nobody's listening. But I encourage you to all keep trying. If you don't mind, or somebody from your team can drop the link to that petition, and if we can sign it for you, I think where there's power and strength in numbers. I know that we have shared the Act for Icarus website. There is a petition there as well that I'm hoping everybody that is here can not only sign but share, because we have thousands of people who have signed, and those signatures will be brought to Berlin, so they know, so our decision makers and our elected officials and delegations and COP presidency know that this is something that we all are demanding, because we want to ensure a livable future, not only for the future generations, but for the generations now, to protect really all the people that we love, all the beautiful things about the planet that we love. And there are many ways that we can do so, but there's power in numbers, and there is obviously easy ways that you can get involved without really being a scientist. Susan, and I think before we're gonna get into Q&A really quickly, but you have been in COPs, I've been in COP. I wonder, I have some thoughts for Katerina since she's gonna be there. Do you have any advice for her as she's navigating through their own internal debacle that her
Yeah.
country is in the midst of, but knowing also that what happens in the Amazon just not doesn't stay in the Amazon. It affects the entire world. So this is not only an important thing for Brazilians and for Caterina, but for all of us.
Yeah, I think I'm excited to watch what unfolds in Berlin because, as Katerina was saying, in Dubai and in Baku, those were countries where public protest was not allowed, right? And so people in those communities couldn't even engage with what was going on in this silent march thing that happened last year, right? That at least Brazil is more of an open democracy, and so people will have an opportunity to show up and make noise. I'm excited about that. My advice to Katerina is drink lots of water. Find when you really feel like you've been activated, find a way to get centered and grounded. Be with your people, know who your people are, stay connected to people who matter to you, to people who know you, to people who you are in community care with, because the space can be really overwhelming. I always experience a lot of cognitive dissonance in that space, like what the actual is going on here, right? Kind of thing. And it's a lot to, over a 2 week period, it's a lot emotionally and physically because you're running around all the time and walking like 25 miles a day. So self-care, community care, and I'm excited to watch the people on the ground from civil society make some noise and really shake things up. Protest is not something that happens in permitted places. Protest is meant to disrupt, and so I'm looking forward to watching the disruption that unfolds. And I'll be thinking of you all from my cold living room in Minneapolis.
Katerina, I've been reflecting upon since I met you, and I remember when I was a young mom in 2014, sitting in Lima, Peru, thinking, wow, the COP20, the pre-COP before Paris is coming to the country where I live. What can I do? And And I just wanted to say that never underestimate the power of your own voice and the power of you, of a mother trying to protect the livable future for their children. Because I was not working for a big organization. I was just trying to figure out what I was going to do. This had become a personal issue to me. And I, had this idea that I wanted to get all the youth from Peru come and show up on COP and raise their voices. And I was actually able to do that and brought more than 600 students from across the country to have a voice. And later, join other groups and bring petitions, thousands and thousands and thousands of petitions to Ban Ki-moon in COP21, and actually represent our kids' climate before, when it started then. So don't underestimate the power you can have, because it can move really mountains. And so that's my advice to you. And obviously, Susan gave you some really good ones. So Godspeed and good luck. I think it's a good time to maybe open it for the people watching us. Any questions from outside and Instagram live world, wherever you're joining us? We'd love to know where you're joining us from. Maybe put it on the chat. And if you have a question for Susan, Katerina, or myself, we'd be happy to take it. In the meantime, Katerina, anything that you want to say that I may have not forgotten, that from your work, your plans at COP, that you'd like to share with the audience?
Great.
Joining from Washington, D.C. Yay! D.C. Awesome. That's
Awesome. I think while people
Colombia.
send
Sorry.
us, okay, while you send us some messages, I just would like to thank you for the advices. I'm really emotional about them because we here in Belém we are living COP30 since it was announced. So we had some struggle with you might have seen accommodation, and people were so concerned about accommodation. But part of this concern was also a way for to minimize the importance of Belém. It was not good points of view of this territory. So Belém is not the principal city of Brazil, and the city was being underestimated. So because they underestimate ourselves. People from here are underestimated. So it's really good to hear from you that I should um, really valorize my voice, my own voice. And I think we will see a lot of things. I really want to see people on the streets. I really want to COP to be a great point for us to empower ourselves, for us to remember when Belém turned around and started to be a climate-centered city. And I really want, most of all, to see the principal and the people on power from the city to see COP as a big learn and to really take city and local action because we need a lot here. And that's it, I guess. And I can see the questions in the chat.
Yes. So let's dive in, right? We've seen people joining us from DC, Washington, New York, Colombia, Belen. There's somebody from Belen also joining us. Somebody from Miami, somebody from Orlando, Gainesville. There is a question in the chat that maybe you both can tackle, which is, what are some tips for someone wanting to organize more in their own community to inspire action from protest? That's a really great question, because maybe for us it feels natural to organize in our own community, but for somebody coming new to this, maybe Susan, we'll start with you, and then Katerina, what tips can you give somebody to organize to inspire action from what needs to happen? We want to see the change in the world.
Yeah, I think local action is really powerful. And I think, the first thing is to recognize that there are many ways to take action, right? I mean, education is an action. Working on local policies at the city or the state or either levels is action. Organizing a boycott or a divestment campaign is action. Marching in the street is action. There are many ways to take action. But what I encourage people to do is what are the environmental and climate justice challenges in your backyard? Who are the people being most impacted by the fossil fuel industry, by pollution? We have been here in Minnesota, and I know through, our partners across the country, fighting data centers. And
Yes.
so what is your local community doing around data centers? Does your city or your county or your state have a climate action plan? What is in that plan? Are they even, now that they've got the plan, are they doing things to implement the plan? So there's so many ways to plug in. You just need to sit down with some like-minded people and figure out what's going on in your backyard and then decide to do something together. But
That is so.
no act is too small, right? No action is too small. Everything counts, and do what you were able to do, right? As someone entering elderdom, right? I know that sometimes my role is not to be on the march, but to be cooking some food for the young people who are on the march so that they get fed when they're done, right? So figure out what your role is and get together with like-minded people and find something to do.
Yeah. And I'm heading your way as well. But I think, passing our wisdom and our experience to
Yeah.
younger generation is also something so important. And I think about a tremendous organizer like Dolores Huerta, who always, who said that every moment is an organizing opportunity,
Yeah.
right? And every person a potential art activist, and every minute a chance to change the world. And so for who asked that question, I would say, ditto to what Susan just said, but think about, is it water? Is it energy? Is it justice issue in your community? Remember that policymakers answer to us. We put them in power. And so calling them on their phone,
Yeah.
on social media, in-person meetings, it goes a long way. So civic participation is crucial, and we should not forget the power that we, the people, have. Katerina, do you have some tips for the person who asked this question of how to organize in their own community?
Sure. I guess at Amazônia de Pé, we always use culture as a way to reunite people. So you were saying that you are with open call for artists. So I really think culture is a way to connect people, to make what we have to say more um, understandable too. And when you identify, as you said, the problem that connect with people, you need a way to protest, and art and culture always unite people. Culture is one of the uh, final things that are able to connect people, because we really live in a world that is really disconnected and people are struggling on connecting with different thoughts. But when we look to culture, we always see people with okay different visions of the world, but connecting through their culture of how they eat, of how they think, of how they express themselves. So it's really a good way to reunite people. It's always a good way to do it. And also, I really think it's important for us to say and be kind. We really need to be kind when we talk about climate change, because people feel this so much in their skin that we are this close of making them be far from us. We want them to be close to us. So how do we do it? How do we say to them that they are not the problem? The big industries and the fossil fuel companies and the destruction machine that is ruining the world right now are the problem. you are not the problem. You can be who you want to be. Of course, your small actions and your micro actions, we need to look for it. But you are not the problem, and we really need to connect with them, not make them be far away. We need them to be close to us. And the guilty is not making anyone closer. So I think this is some of my tips too.
Yeah, those are really good ones. And empathy really is something that this world can use a lot more of. When I worked in Lima in Peru, and I was also very much involved in advocacy to protect the Amazon forest from illegal gold mining. I had somebody said to me once, and I have never forgotten because it's true. Sometimes we get caught up in telling people we need to do this, we need to do that. In the developed world, put solar panels all or get an electric vehicles and things of that nature. But somebody said to me, it's like we can't ask people to go green if they're living in the red, and that is the truth. And unfortunately, the people that have the least responsibility of what is happening to our warming climate are really facing the brunt of those impacts. So leading with empathy is a great tip, Katerina. I really appreciate that. All right, I see some other questions. And I some shout outs by Mothers Rebellion in the Congo. Welcome. So great to see you. We are bound together. Thank you for joining us. And I see that somebody has made notes of the tips that we have put on we have been discussing. And then there's one here um, which is interesting to me. One is, I'll read two of them, so maybe we can tackle just so we can try to get to everybody. One is, how should Gen Z step up to drive climate action? And I think that's a great question. And then there's another one, what does climate justice mean to us mothers? Which I think is great. I'll say that for the Gen Z movement, whoever asked how to organize their own community mobilization, the first thing that came to mind was Greta Thunberg, right? When she started a silent protest on her own in front of her school and became a global movement. And again, it takes one. And I think, that was a clear catalyst for the youth movement that unfortunately, I think COVID put a little bit of a damp to it. But I guess, Susan,
Yeah.
how should Gen Z step up to at this moment? We know that Gen Z is stepping up in many ways, but we are seeing other competing interests and obstacles and challenges. And I guess, Katerina, I'll go with you afterwards. Like, what does it mean to you as a mother, what climate justice means, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think we support a group of local high school age activists here in Minnesota, and the ways that they have stepped into the space, sometimes I think an older activist might be like, huh, that's interesting. So, for example, our students did a deep dive into fast fashion last winter and all the ways that fast fashion is exacerbating the climate crisis because clothes are full of microplastics and they
Hmm.
ultimately those fabrics come from fossil fuels and then they get dumped in primarily Africa and create these big environmental challenges. And so they created a campaign to educate their peers and then started pop-up clothing swaps
That's so
and
great.
mend it clinics. Like they brought in folks from our reuse center and to teach people how to mend clothes that are starting to fall apart. So finding little ways like that are really creative. I think that for me, I love the way Gen Z incorporates the arts into their movement and their protests and their actions. I just want to reiterate that I think that art has to be at the center of all of our movements and expression and culture. We collaborate with a group of young people from around the globe that will have a pavilion at Boling in the green zone about, or the blue zone, in the blue zone, that is about entertainment and culture and the role that entertainment and culture play in solving the climate crisis. So if you're there, go visit them. They're fabulous. Yeah, I think I also noticed that Gen Z is a group of kids who went to school during the COVID shutdown, right? And
Yeah.
so being out in spaces and open is sometimes a little challenging. And so I think we do a lot of training on adultism. And so for me, it's not so much the young people who need training and support, it's the adults need to learn how to get out of the way and let young people lead, right? And so we don't see our young people as future leaders. We see them as present day leaders and really try to help them develop the skills, help them learn how to power map, help them learn how to start a campaign, help them understand how all these pieces across the globe come together so that they have the wherewithal, the skills and the capacity and the knowledge to start some stuff. So,
Amazing.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. And I think, you provide trainings all the time. So
Yeah.
for anybody joining us, make sure to check Climate Generation's website. There are many ways that you can get involved. And there's some great addition comments being put on the chat. I think, art is certainly, and culture, as we said earlier, is a way to touch those heartstrings. And I want to give a plug about the Icarus campaign. And please go to @foricarus.org, check the video, take a look at it, and please sign the petition or participate in the art contest that we have going on. I think it's great. It's a great opportunity for you to make a difference. Now, back to you, Katerina. So I guess I'll repeat the question somebody put in the chat. What does it mean to you as a mother? What does climate justice means to you as a mother?
Great. I just would like to add some point of view on the past question.
Yes, of course.
We recently did project of creating narratives with a group of Gen Zs, really leadership profile of them, but they were Gen Z, so it was a doubt for us to how do we make them act and connect. But they are really interested on listening to other generation voices. So the methodology was for them to do a roundtable with their community, hear from them, and come to get together and create narratives for their own. So I think the methodologies of engagement are not all created. We can create new methodologies and we can call them to create these methodologies. And I think this is a great point of view too for us to advance. We need to create new methodologies. We need to update how we do climate action too. And we need to really want to see, because sometimes we just don't want to see, we just want to repeat what we already do. So I think it's a point of view too. And for me as a mom, and what I expect with climate justice is really for the kids and the youth to have their voice heard. So they don't need us to say what they need. We need, okay, we can say, but we need to hear from them too. We need to look for them, the kids and the youth, and really hear what they have to say, what they feel, and we need to learn how to do it. And these voices must be considered in the UNFCCC spaces too, not only from us normal people, but also the the policymakers and people in the power, the negotiators. So they have the power to create space for to hear people. So I need, for me, climate justice as a mom goes on these ways too.
So well said. So well said. I cannot agree more. I mean, we are, the decisions that we're making today are affecting them. They need to have a seat of the proverbial table and be part of this decision making because they can and they should. I've been a big advocate of delegations bringing youth in their delegation. And I mean, for many, many years, delegation had been non-diverse, but there have been very male-dominated, not a lot of gender equality or gender diversity and racial diversity for that matter, and intergenerational diversity even less. So I absolutely agree that we need to give them the space. And for those of you, again, we were talking about how complex this is. The UNFCCC is that framework from the United Nations that leads the Convention on Climate Change. And there is a youth COI, efforts where young people come together and they will be participatory, but I do believe they need to have an even more relevant place in the negotiations because at the end of the day, this is the future we're gambling with. So thank you, Katarina, for that. I do have a great question from somebody from Lakeland, which we hear all the time. What is an encouraging way to start a conversation with parents or grandparents and young people? And I'll, any of you, please just say who wants to tackle that. I will say from our perspective, which is something that we've been doing for 15 years, is we meet people where they are. We don't come with charts and data and jargony, but we start talking about what we are experiencing in our own backyard. And, we are based in Florida, Miami, headquartered in Miami, and we are on the front lines. We see how hot it is every year, how rains have becoming cataclysmic and more frequent in chronic flooding issues, sea level rise issues. And so we try to tackle that on in our own communities. How are we experiencing that in our own community? If you're a coastal community or if you're an inland community or rural community, it may be impacting you different. But I think everybody's noticing that, especially if you are of age, and the question is for parents and grandparents, you don't need to be a climate scientist to know that it's not getting as cold anymore and that cycles are kind of weird these days. The water cycle has been exacerbated in many ways because it's so hot. So maybe any of you want to tackle that and chime in a bit more?
I can add, we have a set of sort of prompts for conversation that include things like, how do you feel connected to the land? What
Yes.
have you noticed about changing sort of patterns in your community? How are they impacting your own life or your grandfather's life or your kids' lives, right? I mean, we're not Miami, right, in Minnesota, but the last 3 summers have had unbreathable air in the summer due to the wildfire smoke arriving. And so we already have exacerbated rates of asthma in the metropolitan area because of polluting industry. And the last couple summers, it has been difficult for people to be outside because of the wildfire smoke.
Yeah.
And so I don't think anywhere on the planet is safe from climate change anymore. I think we are all experiencing it, and it really is getting people to listen to each other, tell stories about what they feel, what they're noticing. We also ask folks to tell a story about a time when you felt powerful. Right? So tying both their relation to the land and the way that things on the land are changing as a result of climate change, but how have you been in movements? Where are spaces where you have felt powerful? And how can you share what you learned in those spaces with each other? Because I agree with what you all were saying about we need intergenerational spaces to problem solve. And for some reason in our society in general, we tend to isolate elders from young people. And
Yes.
so deeply unfortunate. So we're
Yeah.
trying to figure out ways to bring elders and young people together more often and
Yeah.
just create space for them to listen to each other, because our movement work happens in the context of relationships, right? We don't just show up in a room and all of a sudden there's solidarity, right? It happens because we get to know each other and we break bread together and we share things about our lives with each other. So
Yeah.
we need to keep making spaces like that for folks, for sure.
Yeah. And before I pass it on to you, Katerina, I'll add that the majority of people feel that this is not something that matters to a lot of people, and it's actually the opposite. Many average people are really concerned, but they feel the minority, and they're afraid that they may not understand the science enough to even have conversation in the living room or the dining room kitchen table. And it is quite the opposite. And I would say that somebody just said it's about connecting those dots. And that is so important when we're having conversations with our loved ones or in our inner circles, because I think that's what starts to speak truly to people. And for example, you mentioned asthma. Well, if it's a really extremely hot day and you have asthmatic people in your family, take a look. How are they feeling? Because likely it's going to be exacerbated. We know that we see an increase in emergency visits when it's a really hot day and ground ozone has gone up. So start using those moments to connect dots to people. I think that's a great suggestion from the chat. So what about you, Katarina? What do you think?
So for me, it's also I agree a lot with Susan, and I also think we need to make people conscious that it's not because it's with a climate name that it's not a climate action. So there's a lot of actions that they do on education and caring for people they love that are climate action. But sometimes we just don't call it with this name. And I think we really need to recognize that um, people, I don't know in other countries, but sometimes moms has already too much work to do in their own lives. The work of care is not simple. It's a mental work too. And I think when we go to them, we need to recognize that okay, your mental your your situation is heavier because of climate action too. So your kids are getting sicker because of it. And I think there's these two words on the climate vocabulary: mitigation and adaptation. And as mitigation, that is a way to stop the greenhouse gases are not going as fast as they should. We need go faster with adaptation, that is giving the cities and people conditions to exist. So we need to, okay, the companies are not commitment enough to phase out fossil fuels, phase out restrictions. So we need to adapt our cities. We need to give kids health conditions. We need to advance with this. And I think showing them that the solutions already exist, as you said earlier, and that's possible, giving hope and I forgot in English this word, but it's when you go give the responsibles for accountability. I remember
Well,
the accountability responsible. So I think this is a way for us to empower ourselves, because when we look to our individual power, sometimes we feel powerless. But when we see that, okay, people who have money, who have power, can have the what they need to change things, and it's possible. We just need to pressure and make them know that we are aware of what need to change. We understand what's happening, and I think this is a way too for us to mobilize parents and grandparents, and then they will mobilize their own child too.
Well said, Katerina. Obrigada. Well, I know that we're almost getting close to our end time. I think we have had a wonderful conversation, and our audience have really put some great questions there. We probably could go for another hour. I do want to highlight that Cleo's founder was in the room, and she had an important thing to say, which is to encourage, elders to capture the history and that intergenerational knowledge that must be passed on, because otherwise we could suffer for something that is called baseline syndrome shift, which, to make it simple, is the perception of young generations starting to grow in a warming world and not remembering how cold it used to be, or how biodiverse our nature was, or how it was not grueling hot, or really change, having a distorted perception of what our climate should be. And so we need to make sure not only we continue to educate young generations, but that we continue to account and tell those stories from generation to generation. So I think those are really powerful words and suggestions for us to remind ourselves as we become the elders. So I'll just want to just to maybe say two more thoughts before we close, and give you also one last quick thought for our audience. But the reality is that our children should inherit our climate debt, and we need to demand countries to stop giving public money to the industry that is fueling pollution and wreaking havoc in this planet. We only have this planet that we call home. And so we need to raise our voices. We need to do everything we can, whether it's locally or abroad, to make sure that our voices are heard. So I encourage all of you to get involved any way you can. Again, you don't need to be a climate scientist. Just start with a conversation. Talk about this in your offices, at home, at the kitchen table, in social media. Get informed or get involved with organizations like Our Kids Climate or Climate Generation or the CLEO Institute. Sign a petition. Those do matter. They do matter. Call your elected officials. Use your voice and use your superpowers, because together we can make true lasting change. I want to thank Caterina. Caterina, obrigada, muito prazer. And Susan for Climate Generation for joining us. And I'm gonna pass to the two of you for just one last thought before we say goodbye from today's conversation.
Go ahead.
Okay, so I'm very happy for our conversation today and for all the questions and for you to be here with us. I really think we need to continue these discussions like this. I feel empowered at the end of this live because of what I heard from you. So I'm really glad, and I'm really happy to share a little bit of this voice from Belém, from Amazon, from this young mom who is talking. So thank you so much for hearing me. And I hope to see some of you here in Belém. And you can reach out to at Amazonia de Pé Instagram, at mine Instagram too, and our kids too. And I'm really glad to our kids climate for connecting us. And let's believe and let's continue our climate action, because it's that really matters for the world to keep being our home, and for us to keep being here too. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just am really appreciative of you, Yoka, and the CLEO Institute for inviting me to be here today. It was really lovely to be in conversation with you too, Katarina. I hope someday we can meet face to face. This is it, right? Just get in a room and have conversations, y'all. We can turn this big, ugly ship. We just have to stop thinking that the problem is too big and too overwhelming and start small and follow it wherever it takes us. So
Yeah, I think those are great last words, Susan. And to all of us, to all of you listening, we are turning this ship even so slowly, even though it feels sometimes very daunting and it's not. Don't forget that it is moving slowly, but moving. And so we need to keep adding the pressure. So I'm going to leave you one thought. Get involved. Go to actforicarus.org, sign the petition, share the video, participated in the art contest. And I know Peyton will put the social media handles for Katarina and her organizations, for Susan and her organization, so we can connect. Because we really, connection is what truly changed the world. And I appreciate for you spending 1 hour of your day today. Thank you so much for being here. And Godspeed, Katarina. We're rooting for you in Berlin. We'll send some support very soon. I hope to connect with you soon. Thanks again, everybody.